Real-life hobbits existed. They lived in the Philippines 50,000 years ago. They were 3 feet tall, climbed trees like monkeys, and scientists only found 13 bones total. And what those bones revealed is so bizarre that it's rewriting everything we thought we knew about human evolution. I'm not talking about fantasy, I'm talking about Homo Luzonensis, a species of ancient human discovered in a Philippine cave in 2019 that has paleontologists completely baffled. Because these weren't just small humans, they were something else entirely. Let me show you why this might be the most mysterious human species ever discovered, and why it's only found in one place on Earth, the Philippines. In 2007, a team of archaeologists was exploring Callao Cave in northern Luzon. It's a massive limestone cave system that locals had known about for generations, but what they found in the deep chambers changed everything. A single foot bone, tiny, ancient, and completely unexpected. At first, they thought it might be from a child, but when they analyzed it, the bone was fully developed. This was an adult human with feet the size of a 10-year-old child. The dating showed it was 50,000 years old. For 12 years, that foot bone sat in labs while scientists tried to figure out what they'd found. They went back to the cave, carefully excavating layer after layer of sediment. And slowly, they found more bones. A finger bone here, teeth there, parts of a thigh bone, pieces of another individual. Our goal on this video is to get 500 likes and subscribe, Time Forge Stories, and click on bell and turn on notifications as we uncover more hidden story. By 2019, they had 13 fossils total, 13 bones representing at least 3 individuals, 2 adults and 1 child. And when they finally published their findings, they announced something incredible. This was a completely new species of human. They named it Homo Luzonensis after the island where it is found. 3 feet tall, maybe less. We're talking about adult humans shorter than most kindergartners. But here's where it gets really weird. When scientists examined those bones closely, they found something that shouldn't exist. The finger and toe bones were curved, dramatically curved, like the finger bones of Australopithecines, our ancient ancestors who lived millions of years ago. Curved fingers and toes mean one thing: these humans were climbing trees. 50,000 years ago, when modern humans were making art and developing complex tools, there were 3-foot-tall humans in the Philippines swinging through trees. Think about how bizarre that is. By 50,000 years ago, humans had spread across most of the world. We developed sophisticated language, complex societies, and advanced tool-making. We domesticated fire. We were behaviorally modern, and yet, on this island in the Philippines, there was a completely separate human species that had retained tree-climbing abilities that our ancestors lost millions of years ago. It's like finding a time capsule of human evolution frozen in the wrong era. Now, if you know anything about paleoanthropology, you're probably thinking about Homo Floresiensis right now, the so-called Hobbits of Indonesia, discovered in 2003 on the island of Flores. They were also tiny, around 3.5 feet tall. They also lived in Southeast Asia, and they also lived relatively recently in evolutionary terms. So naturally, when Homo Luzonensis was discovered, everyone asked, are these related? Are these cousin species? Here's the shocking answer. We don't know. And we might never know, because we only have 13 bones. The teeth tell us something fascinating. Homo Luzonensis had molars that were even smaller than those of Homo floresiensis, tiny grinding teeth, smaller than any other human species we've found. But the premolars were weird. They had 2 or 3 roots, which is a primitive trait we see in much older human species. So you've got this bizarre mix, tiny teeth like a modern human, curved climbing fingers like an ancient Australopithecine, premolars with root structures we haven't seen in millions of years. It's like someone took parts from different points in human evolution and assembled them into one creature. This is what scientists call mosaic evolution. Different parts of the body evolving at different rates, keeping some ancient features while developing new ones. And Homo Luzonensis might be the most extreme example we've ever found. Let me tell you about the discovery itself, because it's a story that almost didn't happen. Armand Mijares, a Filipino archaeologist from the University of the Philippines, had been exploring Callao Cave for years. He was specifically looking for evidence of early human occupation in the Philippines. Most archaeologists weren't looking in the Philippines. The prevailing theory was that early humans island hopped through Indonesia and never made it to the Philippine archipelago until much later. The Philippines was considered a backwater in human evolution, a place that modern humans reached tens of thousands of years after they'd settled everywhere else. Mijares disagreed. He believed humans had reached the Philippines much earlier than anyone thought. So he kept digging in Callao Cave, even when funding was scarce and other scientists were skeptical. And he was right. Not only did he find Homo Luzonensis, but he found evidence of hominin activity in the Philippines dating back over 700,000 years, stone tools, butchered rhinoceros bones, proof that human ancestors had been in the Philippines for an incomprehensibly long time. This completely changed the map of human evolution. The Philippines wasn't a backwater. It was a major chapter in the human story that had been completely ignored. Now here's where the mystery deepens. Luzon has always been an island. Even during ice ages when sea levels dropped significantly, Luzon was never connected to mainland Asia by a land bridge, which means however Homo Luzonensis's ancestors got there, they had to cross open ocean 700,000 years ago. Crossing ocean channels, we have no evidence that humans of that era could build boats. We have no evidence they could navigate open water. And yet, somehow they made it to Luzon. And once there, they evolved into something completely unique. Island dwarfism is a well-known phenomenon. When large animals get isolated on islands with limited resources, they tend to evolve smaller body sizes over thousands of generations. We see it in elephants, deer, hippos. The smaller body requires less food, which is a huge advantage on a resource-limited island. Homo floresiensis in Indonesia shows this. Their ancestors were likely larger humans who reached Flores and, over hundreds of thousands of years, evolved smaller bodies. That's the leading theory anyway. But Homo Luzonensis is different. Those primitive features, the curved fingers, the unusual teeth, they suggest this species might have evolved from a much older ancestor. Maybe their ancestors weren't Homo erectus like we think reached Flores. Maybe they were something even more ancient. Some scientists think Homo Luzonensis could be descended from Homo habilis, one of the earliest species in our genus, or even an Australopithecine, which would mean a species from 2 million years ago somehow crossed an ocean, reached the Philippines, and survived there in isolation for hundreds of thousands of years while the rest of the world moved on. That sounds impossible, but the bones don't lie. Let me put this in perspective. 50 to 67,000 years ago, when Homo Luzonensis was living in Philippine caves, the world was incredibly diverse in terms of human species. Modern humans, Homo sapiens, were in Africa and starting to spread into Europe and Asia. Neanderthals were in Europe and Western Asia. Denisovans were in Eastern Asia. Homo Floresiensis was in Indonesia. And Homo Luzonensis was in the Philippines. 5 different human species, all alive at the same time, all occupying different parts of the world. We know modern humans interbred with Neanderthals and Denisovans because we carry their DNA. But we have no idea if we ever encountered Homo Luzonensis or Homo Floresiensis. Did we meet them? Did we compete with them? Did we wipe them out? We don't know. Because they left almost no trace, just a handful of bones in a cave. Here's something that keeps me up at night. We only found Homo Luzonensis because archaeologists happened to be digging in that specific cave. Callao Cave is just one cave on one island in an archipelago of over 7,000 islands. What else is out there? How many other species of humans lived and died without leaving any trace we've found yet? The Philippines alone could be hiding multiple unknown human species in unexplored caves. Southeast Asia has thousands of caves that have never been systematically excavated. Every time we dig somewhere new, we find something that changes the textbook. In 2003, we thought Homo floresiensis was an anomaly, a weird outlier. Then we found Homo Luzonensis and realized island Southeast Asia was a hotbed of human evolution, a place where isolated populations evolved in completely unique directions. What else is out there? Let's talk about what life might have been like for Homo Luzonensis. We know they lived in caves, obviously, because that's where we found them. We know they were small, which in a tropical environment actually makes sense. Smaller bodies overheat less easily. In the dense Philippine jungles, being 3 feet tall and able to climb trees would be a massive advantage. The curved fingers and toes suggest they spent significant time in trees. Maybe they foraged for fruit. Maybe they escaped predators by climbing. Maybe they built sleeping nests in branches like some primates do. We don't know what tools they made because we haven't found any definitively associated with Homo Luzonensis bones. But the 700,000-year-old stone tools from the same region tell us their ancestors were capable of making tools. So probably Homo Luzonensis made tools too. Simple stone flakes, maybe wooden spears, the kind of technology that doesn't preserve well. We don't know if they had language. Their brain size is unknown because we don't have a skull, just a few skull fragments. But they survived for hundreds of thousands of years on an island, which suggests they were smart enough to adapt, to find food, to avoid predators, to raise children successfully generation after generation. They were human in all the ways that matter, just not human like us. Here's the part that really gets to me. These people had culture. They had knowledge passed down through generations. Imagine being a child, Homo Luzonensis, learning from your parents where to find food, which fruits were safe to eat, how to climb safely, where predators lurked, which caves offered shelter, thousands of generations of accumulated knowledge, an entire civilization in its own way. And then one day, they were gone. The last Homo Luzonensis died, and with them died everything they knew, everything they'd learned, their entire way of seeing the world. We'll never know their stories. We'll never know what they thought about, what they feared, what they loved, We just have 13 bones in a lab and a lot of questions we can't answer. The scientific debate around Homo Luzonensis is intense. Some scientists accept it as a valid species. Others are skeptical, arguing 13 bones isn't enough to definitively say it's a new species, rather than a population of unusual Homo sapiens or a diseased individual. That's a legitimate scientific debate. In paleoanthropology, you need a certain amount of skeletal material to confidently identify a species, and 13 bones is borderline. But the combination of features is so unusual that most experts who've studied the fossils think this is real. This is something genuinely new. What's frustrating is we need more fossils. We need a skull. We need DNA, though the hot, humid Philippine climate makes DNA preservation unlikely. We need more individuals so we can understand the range of variation in the species. And the only way to get that is to keep digging, to explore more caves, to fund more archaeological work in the Philippines and across Southeast Asia. Because I guarantee you, there are more discoveries waiting. More species we haven't found yet. More chapters of the human story still buried. Here's why this matters, beyond just being cool and weird. For over a century, the story of human evolution was told as a straight line. We evolved in Africa, became more advanced, spread out, and replaced everyone else. Modern humans were the pinnacle, the end point, the most evolved. But every new discovery chips away at that story. We now know human evolution wasn't a ladder. It was a bush with dozens of branches, most of which went extinct. We weren't the inevitable result of evolution. We were one outcome among many possibilities. Homo Luzonensis represents a completely different path. Isolated on an island, they evolved in ways that made sense for their environment. They kept features that worked for them, even if those features were ancient. They developed their own unique combination of traits, and they survived for hundreds of thousands of years. That's not a failed evolutionary experiment. That's success. They were perfectly adapted to their world. The fact that they eventually went extinct doesn't change that. All species go extinct eventually, including, someday, us. The discovery of Homo Luzonensis also matters for the Philippines specifically. For Filipino archaeologist Arman Mijares, finding this species was personal. He said, "As a Filipino and Southeast Asian, we tend to be on the periphery of this debate about human evolution. Now we can be actively engaged. We are part of this story. For too long, the human evolution story has been dominated by discoveries in Africa, Europe, and parts of Asia. The assumption was that the interesting stuff happened there, and everywhere else was just where modern humans eventually spread to. The Philippines was barely a footnote, but now we know the Philippines has one of the most mysterious and fascinating human species ever discovered. Filipino archaeologists and scientists are at the forefront of rewriting human evolutionary history. That's huge. There's something poetic about the Hobbit comparison. In Tolkien's stories, hobbits were overlooked, underestimated, considered unimportant, but they ended up being crucial to the story. They mattered in ways the big, important people didn't expect. Homo Luzonensis is the same. For decades, no one thought to look for ancient humans in the Philippines. It was assumed they weren't there, or if they were, they weren't interesting. Just modern humans who arrived late to the party. But they were there, and they weren't modern humans at all. They were something unique, something that challenges our understanding of what humans can be, something that proves the story is so much bigger and weirder than we imagined. Here's what we still don't know, and it's a long list. We don't know where Homo Luzonensis came from. We don't know if they evolved from Homo erectus, Homo habilis,